Good evening or good afternoon. Well, I'm gonna put this here so that I can see your face. Good evening, good afternoon, everyone. We are here for the last week, last two principles of faith from the Rambam, and we're in the space that's under construction, very much under construction. So I just started saying it's like the real thing, the real deal. There's no frills. You're not seeing. We're not hiding. We're not trying to fake anything. This is what it is. Mm-hmm. There was a story of the soldiers in the Russian army of all places, the Russian army, and they were standing in salute for the Tsar who was supposed to pass by. His carriage was supposed to pass by. So they have thousands of soldiers that are lined up, and it's a sweltering hot day. So they're all standing there in their full uniform. I just opened the window.
No, I meant those soldiers are hot.
Yeah.
Sorry.
The soldiers are hot. They're in full uniform. It's just getting hotter and hotter. And they're standing right by a river, a pool, whatever it was. So they say, so finally there were a couple, renegade soldiers, and they threw off their uniform, jumped in the river, cooling down. And it was 1, 2, 3 guys. And then the word came that the Tsar is here. So they're quickly getting their things together. And there was one soldier who was a little bit lagging behind. And by the time he got out, there wasn't time for him to get dressed. So he put his gun on. And he stood there in salute in his birthday suit. And the Tsar comes by and looks at him. And he said to the Tsar, and the Tsar asked him, what's going on? He said, all of the other soldiers, they're serving you with their fancy uniforms and their medals. I'm serving you with me. All you have is me. You don't need anything else. And so the Chassidim, they said that story that sometimes when we come to Hashem and this person's so smart, and this person's so this, and this person's so that. Come on, Hashem, I'm serving you. I don't have anything. I'm here. This is all you have. So we're here learning today. We don't have, if you thought that we didn't have much of a shul before, today we have even less of a shul. But this is it. We're here.
You have more. You have more of a shul because it's becoming finished.
Amen. And afterwards we'll do some we'll get some color opinions if you're up for color opinions.
I'm up for color opinions.
Okay. So getting to Mashiach. Yeah. No, yeah. The last two principles of faith. Let's read. We'll read number 12. I believe with complete faith in the coming of Mashiach, and although he may tarry, nevertheless I wait every day for him to come.
Amen for that.
The source is God will restore your fortunes and have mercy and gather you in. That's from Deuteronomy 33. So that's straight out of the Torah. So for whoever asks, well, is the Mashiach really an idea from the Torah? There you got it. Deuteronomy 33. 30:3. And then principle number 13, I believe with complete faith that there will be resurrection of the dead at the time when it will be the will of the Creator, blessed be his name, and exalted be his remembrance forever and ever. So this is another principle, that the people who have passed on, the people who are dead, will become alive again. And the source is, many who sleep in the dust shall awaken, some to everlasting life, and some to everlasting shame and reproach. And that's from Daniel 12:2.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Just about what you just said. Because I don't know the answer to this. So when these people, well, we don't even know. Well, you might know. When these people are alive again, will they be changed as how do I put it? If you had a bad relationship with your father, which I did not, but if someone did, would that relationship still be, would that be changed too? Or would the person still have a bad relationship with the father?
Very good question.
I don't know.
And this is, let's go from the ground up,
No problem.
if that's okay.
Yeah.
So going back to number 12, Mashiach, it's a principle of faith that there will be a Mashiach. Now, just in the nitpicking at the words a little bit, he adds something that he didn't add by any of the other ones. And although he may tarry, nevertheless, I will wait for him to come. Now, in the Rambam, in the not the Mishnah Torah, but not the Pirush HaMishnayos, but in the Mishnah Torah, the Rambam writes that anyone who does not believe in Mashiach, or someone who's not actively anticipating and waiting for his arrival, is a what you would call a non-believer. It's a kofer. A kofer, he's someone who's doesn't believe in the Torah. He's not his Torah. His Torah is nothing, and that fits. That very much aligns with what we've been saying about all the principles of faith. That if someone believes, someone says, "Oh, I believe in God and I believe in the Torah and I'll do I pray every day and I learn Talmud and I do everything that I'm supposed to do, but I don't believe in Mashiach." This person's Judaism is meaningless. Now, Mashiach is not even one of the 613 mitzvahs. But it's such a principle of faith that it's up there with believing in God. Now, why would that be? Why is Mashiach so important to Judaism? That if someone accepts everything else besides for Mashiach, now it's nothing.
What if they were so unknowledgeable that they didn't even know that a Mashiach in Judaism was even an issue?
That's a very, very good question. And as a matter of fact, some of the commentaries on the 13 Principles of Faith, they actually explain that what does it mean, another interpretation, what it means that it's a principle of faith is that all the other parts of the Torah, ignorance is an excuse, I guess you could say. So if someone says, "Oh, well, I wasn't raised putting on tefillin every day.
This person was raised secular.
I was raised secular. I didn't know anything." So then a person can't be held responsible for things that they didn't have a chance. However, the principles of faith are things that you've got to understand, that even things that you came to on your own conclude, ignorance is not an excuse.
This person was assimilated, basically.
So again, I mean, what are we talking about over here? We're talking about religion. We're talking about Judaism as the religion of Judaism. So if a person could say, "Oh, am I Jewish? Do I know anything?" Yeah, I know a little bit about Judaism. If you don't believe in Mashiach, it doesn't matter that you weren't taught or that you weren't. Mashiach is something that is so much a part of Judaism, and the same way God. If someone says, "Oh, I'm Jewish. I believe I'm Jewish and I practice Judaism, but I don't believe in God," and then, well, what do you mean you don't believe in God? I wasn't taught to believe in God. That's not an excuse. For if you're practicing, if you profess to be practicing Judaism, ignorance is not an excuse for any of these things. As we spoke last week, I think was it last week, the reward and punishment. Yes, the reward and punishment that we had last week. Like we said last week, the point of reward and punishment, it's not just that God is bribing us to do His bidding. The reward, belief in the reward, is another way of saying that the things that God asked me to do are meaningful. They have inherent meaning. That's what it means. And if a person, that's the thing, that's the key that you have to be able to come to on your own conclusion. If a person says, "Oh, God asked me to do something," but there isn't really any meaning to it, that doesn't make any sense. That can't be that can't be a religion that makes sense. That can't be Judaism. So, what am I saying? So as it relates to Mashiach. So why is Mashiach so important to the extent that someone who, even out of ignorance, didn't know anything about Mashiach? No, you totally got it wrong. So some of the commentaries, let's actually, even before we go there, let's take a couple moments and talk about what Mashiach is. What is the definition of Mashiach? I'd be curious. Let's maybe just go around. What's the definition of Mashiach? Anointed. Mashiach means anointed one. So Mashiach is a person who's anointed.
A man like Moses shall come.
A man like Moses shall come.
But that's not very...
No, okay. Yeah.
King like King David.
King like King David. And that's mostly about the personality of Mashiach. Mashiach is also, you can divide it into, there's the personality of Mashiach, and then there is the time period of Mashiach.
Bring the exiles back.
Bring the exiles back. What else? Temples built.
He'll restore everything.
Restore everything, and so that's really where we need to go. Restore everything. What does it mean to restore everything?
The world will be renewed.
So there's a story that people say, this is from back in the old country, in Poland. So there was a Yankel, and he came back from shul, and he comes to his wife and he says,
Yankel, what is that?
That name. His name was Yankel.
Yankel. Why?
His name was Yankel.
This is my thing.
And he comes home and he tells his wife, he says, Yetta, Mashiach is coming. The rabbi said today that Mashiach is coming. She says, oy vey, this is terrible news. He says, what do you mean? It's wonderful, Mashiach is coming. She says, are you kidding me? We've spent all these years suffering. And then finally now we have a little bit of financial stability. We finally repainted the house. We were able to put a carpet in the house. And now you're telling us that we're picking up and we're going to Israel. So he says, Yetta, but think about it like this. When Mashiach comes, the Cossacks won't be bothering us. So she says, in that case, let Mashiach take the Cossacks to Israel. The joke, I find it to be a very funny joke. But part of what's so funny about it, what I find so funny about it, is that it's so true. It's so true in that the way that people look at Mashiach, and Mashiach is, there's one way that Mashiach is kind of like some sort of religious inconvenience.
I felt like that too myself.
And then there's another way of looking at Mashiach, that it's a bailout from your problems. And so that's why she says, so let the Mashiach take that. In other words, it's not Mashiach that I want. Let me stay in, I have my reality. I want my wall-to-wall carpet. I want my painted house. And I have problems. Let Mashiach take my problems away. Why do I have to move somewhere else? Why do I have to lose that which I already had in order to have Mashiach? So that's why from step one, let's talk for a moment about Mashiach as the era of Mashiach, the time period of Mashiach, is essentially, it's exactly what you said. There's one more thing that I would add, and that is it's the person of Mashiach finishing the wars that are the wars of God. In other words, the people trying to destroy the Jewish nation. And these are wars that are happening right in front of our eyes. They're here, and Mashiach is going to come finish them off, involved in them, win the wars, and then after that, it's exactly what you said: building the temple, bringing back the exiles. 3 things: finishing off the wars, bringing back the exiles. Now, I should actually say, sorry for jumping back and forth, but I want to say one more little thing about how to identify the person of Mashiach. The Rambam says in the Mishnah Torah that there are 5 characteristics in order for someone to be a Mashiach candidate. Number 1 is they have to be ben achar ben. They have to be from the tribe of Judah, son after son from King David and King Solomon. Number 2, someone who is exceptional in Torah knowledge, not just like a regular guy who happens to know Torah, but exceptional in Torah knowledge, someone who's obsessed with mitzvahs, someone who is actively involved in restoring the breaches in Judaism. The breaches, like the one that really comes to mind for me is the law right now, the law Miu Yehudi, who is a Jew. You're familiar with this? Who is a Jew law in Israel?
Yeah.
It's a very, very painful thing, and it's even becoming like another issue right now. You have people who they're angry at Israel that Israel's not taking more Ukrainian refugees, and it's such a sticky thing. Israel is not a country like other countries. And to take in people who are not halachically Jewish that's a way to destroy the Jewish people. And I actually read this was an article. It was up for a day and then it just disappeared. It was on an Israeli newspaper probably a year ago. That in the last, I think, 20 years, 80% of the Jewish people, 80% of immigrants to Israel were not halachically Jewish, which is crazy. That's a crazy. And you have full political parties in Israel. Israel's not like America that has 2.
It's very splintered.
Israel has, like other countries, it's a parliamentary government. It has 20, 30 political parties, and so you have full political parties who their whole agenda is just doing away with the Jewish identity of Israel, with the call it ethnic or the halachic definition of a Jew, and that's like their whole. So that's like one of these things sorting out. You literally have people who grow up and then they become religious and then they marry someone who's Jewish and Orthodox and then they find out that really they're not Jewish. And even here in Temecula, we've had stories like this. It's a very sad thing. But these are the kinds of things that Mashiach needs to sort out, fixing the breaches in Judaism. Then the next one is and bringing Jews back to Torah mitzvahs. So what did I say? Son after son from King David, exceptional in Torah wisdom, obsessed with mitzvahs and getting other people to do mitzvahs, fixing the breaches in Judaism, and then fighting the wars of God. So Mashiach is a war man, a military man.
General.
And to the extent that the example that the Rambam gives is of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva in the Talmud, he declared that Bar Kokhba was he thought that Bar Kokhba was Mashiach. Bar Kokhba, are you familiar with the revolt? And he thought that Bar Kokhba was the Mashiach. And now these 5 characteristics are to be a Mashiach candidate. that doesn't mean that that person is the Mashiach, because until all of the jobs are finished, that Mashiach has not come. There are three things: winning the wars, bringing all the Jews back to Israel, and building the temple. Or building the temple and bringing the Jews back to Israel, in that order. That is how the person is tested. Once those three things happen, that is when the era of Mashiach has been ushered in. So it doesn't mean that Rabbi Akiva was wrong for thinking Bar Kokhba was Mashiach. He legitimately, Bar Kokhba was a legitimate Mashiach candidate, and it happened to be that he didn't pan out. Now, so why did I say all of this? So Mashiach, in essence, building the temple, there are 613 commandments, right? Of those 613, do you know how many we can fulfill today?
Half.
About half. A little bit less than half, I think. What happened to the other half?
You need a temple.
And you need a temple. All the laws of sacrifices. I was just studying this morning with David, and we were studying the laws of Pesach, and it's interesting how Erev Pesach, the day before Pesach, is different than every other Erev holiday. So every holiday has like Erev, like the eve of that holiday. Even they say eve, it's not the night of; it's the day before. So the day before Sukkot, the day before Rosh Hashanah, the day before Pesach is very different than the day before any other holiday on the calendar. You know why?
You have to sacrifice the lambs.
Exactly.
In the evening.
No, not in the evening.
Or in the time between the days, right?
It says Bein Harbayim.
Yeah.
It says Bein Harbayim, but that's why you need the Talmud.
Mm-hmm.
The Talmud has a whole chapter on exactly when Arvei Psachim, not Arvei Psachim, Pesach Nishchat, that somewhere between the morning hours until mid-afternoon, that is when the entire Jewish people comes to sacrifice their Korban Pesach, and that's why there's another chapter also on Pesachim, which is called Makom Shenogu, a full chapter on the customs of whether people treat Erev Pesach like other holidays. Are you allowed to work on Erev Pesach? Because it may have like a quasi holiday status because of the sacrifice. So Pesach is coming up in a couple of weeks, and we're going to be having a Seder. And then there's the question. The question is, what kind of a Seder are we going to have? Are we going to have a Seder the kind that we've had for the last 2,000 years, which is a half Judaism Seder where we're eating, the one matzah and then another matzah and another matzah. That this matzah is to remember the matzah, and this matzah is to remember the sacrifice. Like we're eating a piece of matzah to remember lamb chops. That's. And then we're eating another matzah to remember how Hillel would put the lamb chops together with the matzah. And we're eating the matzah over and over and over again. But that's not real Judaism. The real Judaism is you offer the sacrifice. But we can't do that where our hands are tied behind our back. And the same way that our Pesach is a half Judaism, also the other holidays. All the holidays, and not just all the holidays, but every day.
Yeah.
Every day there are sacrifices,
right.
And there's the ritual purity, and there are agricultural law. Part of what we want to do in the new property is we're going to have the 7 fruits of Israel. We're going to teach agricultural law, Jewish agricultural law. 20% of the Talmud is agricultural law. 17%, something like that.
Very, very
But that's only in Israel?
Some of it isn't only in Israel. Some of it, and some of the things are only in temple times, and some of the things are rabbinically outside Israel. And yeah, but that's how much there is to teach about it. there's the Shemitah. So you go read the Bible, you read the Torah, and you come out that God has 613 commandments for us. And at the end of these 613 commandments, so now the question is, well, why aren't we doing it? And if a person could come to a conclusion that the way that things are right now is the way that it's meant to be, you see where I'm going? The whole Judaism's meaningless.
Right.
God said something and he wasn't serious. He was joking. God said he wants us to do 613 commandments, and we have our hands tied behind our back that 300 of them we can't do. So now it's interesting how Mashiach is like the last one over here. But part of the reason why Mashiach is the last one, and also in the Mishnah Torah, the Rambam puts Mashiach last. After all the other laws, the reason is because once you appreciate that there are 630 commandments, once you know all of them, then the obvious question is why not? And that's where Mashiach comes in. Mashiach is, yes, if I believe that Mashiach is going to come, and then not only that, that's why he adds over here, I believe with complete faith in the coming and Mashiach, and although he may tarry, nevertheless I wait every day for him to come. There's like that extra thing. Why? Because if you really care about doing mitzvahs, it should bother you that Mashiach's not here. If it doesn't bother you that Mashiach's not here, what does that say about how... It's like when you really care about someone, you want them to have what they want. And it's not about me and what my comfort zone is, and take the Cossacks to Israel and let me have my freshly painted house. It happens to be also that the Rebbe spoke many times about how the Hebrew word, and you'll appreciate this, Ayal. There's the word for exile. How do you say exile? Galut, or in the singular is goyla. Goyla is exile. And then what's the word for another word for Mashiach for redemption? It's part of the blessing that we say right before the Amidah. Go'al Yisrael, Geula. Geula is redemption. So if you look at the letters, if I'd write it out, Goyla and Geula, they're the same thing, same letters, besides for one aleph. Goyla, exile, is Gimel Vav Lamed Hey, and Geula is Gimel Aleph Vav Lamed Hey. And so the Rebbe explained that really gets to the essence of Mashiach. Mashiach is not that you're giving up one reality for another reality, that you're going to drop your house and you're going to have to you're going to have to be subject to a real estate market in Israel that is severely reduced by supply and demand, because now there's a huge demand of people who are now moving to Israel, and no one's going to be able to. And am I on this side of the green line, or am I that side of the green line? And then we have all the problems that come along with that. Mashiach is only adding an aleph, and what is the aleph? It is the awareness of Hashem, which that gets to another element of Mashiach. So we have the halachic definition of Mashiach is the ability to fulfill all 613 commandments. That's the halachic definition. Then we have the what you might say Kabbalistic definition, or the prophetic, you might even call it the prophetic definition, looking at all the prophecies, talking about how you will see God, and the all the flesh will see God, and a heightened awareness of God in the world. That's another. That is another definition of Mashiach. Now, the first one is the one that I think really explains why it's a principle of faith. Because all of the, having a heightened awareness of God is, that's good and wonderful, but if God didn't say that that's how it's going to be, then that what makes it a principle of faith, what makes it so important, is the fact that it is the totality of everything else that God said. It's not a new thing for itself. It is everything. Then we have the 13th principle, which is actually basically like another stage in Mashiach itself, the resurrection of the dead. And you'll notice how in number 12, the Rambam is like, and this actually is not exactly the words of the Rambam, because it's the Ani Mamin, is the way that they were put into a siddur, so someone else wrote a song essentially based on the 13 principles of faith, because the Rambam wrote it in pages. It's like pages and pages. This was like summed up into a song. But it's like it, except these words are not just like, Abrams just wrote it up. This is written by someone very qualified, and it could be, it's not inappropriate to nitpick at it. Number 13 is, I believe with complete faith that there will be the resurrection of the dead when it will be the will of the Creator, blessed be His name. So it's like, whereas Mashiach, it's like now, even if it's not coming now, I'm still waiting now, or when are you coming? Now. It's like when like this project, that's where I'm at right now. like now. Let's do it now. Hey, you didn't. Can we get the inspection? How about now? How about you don't want the inspector doesn't like how the hole was dug. He wants a foot another. He wants it a foot this way and okay, come back now. Do it right now because I need it now. That's what Mashiach is. Mashiach is something because, of course, if I appreciate that which Hashem said that He wants us to fulfill 613 mitzvahs, and I can only do 300 of them. I'm doing them every day. This guy, the worker yesterday, he asked me, what happened? Because I was praying in the morning, and he says, I had to finish praying. If he needed some help, or no, because I was helping them hold the drywall so that they could screw into the ceiling downstairs. And I'm like, okay, am I good for the next 40 minutes? I need to go pray. He's like, Rabbi, do you do that like every day? Like, I haven't missed a day in 21 years at least. Wow. And you do that once a day? 3 times a day? 3 times? Never missed? That's like, if you're committed, if you're committed to it, Hashem, that's not why. Why am I doing? Why do you pray once a day or 3 times a day? Because Hashem said Hashem wants 613 mitzvahs, not the 300. But then when it comes to the resurrection of the dead, then it's already at the time when God chooses. That is not something that we need to be, hey, today, right now. Why is that? Now, and let's go a step before that. It says that there's going to be a resurrection of the dead, and that's a principle of faith. Principle of faith? Like, okay, fine, Mashiach, there's a good explanation for why Mashiach is a principle of faith. Okay. A resurrection of the dead? If you don't believe that the dead people are going to come back to life, then your whole Judaism, you got Judaism all wrong. Why? So, let's go. This, especially since this is the last one, it would give me tremendous satisfaction if you could figure out the way that I think, the way that the thought process here. We've done this for all the other 13, the other principles of faith. Now we're finally up to number 13. What does it mean that the dead people are going to come back to life? What is the real What's the real meaning of those of that statement? Let's go. Even I'll give you a hint. Principle number 13, in a certain way, is a continuation of principle number 11.
Well, seems like it's part of the reward.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's like the ultimate reward.
Mm-hmm. So, what are we usually trained to think? What's reward?
A gift for doing something good.
So it's okay. Why did you say that this is the ultimate reward?
Because life is a reward. Being alive, they have a chance to be happy.
But they're not happy now. All the dead people are sad. They're crying.
But they
Crying
will,
and-
but if they come back, they'll be alive.
But right now they're dead. Are they sad right now?
No.
So
I don't. I'm trying to think back of what you said last week about, they go through, Gehenna, and then they're purified and they're brought back, but there's a cycle. So what's the difference between this resurrection and that cycle that you talked about?
it's the end of the cycle.
The end of the cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what makes it different than the previous cycles?
So usually the way that we think, Mashiach is kind of like turning everything upside down. It's like turning everything upside down in a good way. Sometimes change, like usually we're creatures of habit. Like we like things to just stay the way they are. That's why she'd rather deal with Cossacks. And if you're gonna do anything, if you want to do me a favor, take them away. Take away something bad. It's hard. It's kind of hard for us to like wrap our minds around like a total transformation that's only positive. But that's essentially what Mashiach is. The way that things work right now is that life is a time to work, and heaven is a place to get reward for the work that you've done. Now, again, the reward, it's not just a bribe. The reward is that it's the appreciation of that which you have done. And so right now the souls, they're up there and they're waiting to come down, because in heaven they appreciate the power of what a soul can do together with a body.
Mm-hmm.
A soul without a body, even though the soul is essentially alive, it's like with its hands tied behind its back, it can't do anything.
Mm.
A soul comes down to work, and then that work is boom, then you go back up, and that's where you get the reward. And then once you're up there getting your reward, then you have even a deeper appreciation for how powerful that which you can do here in this world is. So then you come back down and do it again, and then go back up so that you can get the reward of that action. And then comes along the 13th principle of faith, the resurrection of the dead, and it's essentially putting the brakes on that. So, no more. There's no more cycle. This is the end.
All I can think of is the word complete,
Yeah. Yeah.
but that's just only one word.
One word. Okay, now you're on to it. We're getting there. When we say that it's the end of the cycle. Excuse me. When we say that the resurrection of the dead is the end of the cycle, what does that mean? What does that mean is the end of the cycle? It means that this is the ultimate reward. There were many, for thousands of years, for the first 5,782 years of creation, people who died went up to heaven, and that is where they received the reward, because the reward of heaven can't be the reward of heaven is more powerful than any reward that you can have down here.
Mhm.
And then comes along the resurrection of the dead, and it's saying, nope. The real ultimate reward is not in heaven. Heaven cannot adequately reward you. Reward meaning, again, not a bribe, but heaven, the currency in heaven cannot really reward you for that, is not adequate to reward you for that which you can accomplish in this world.
Is it the reunification of the soul to the body?
Yeah. I mean, that's what it means, resurrection of the dead.
Well, I know, but I'm just
Yeah.
trying to.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure your brain out.
Which body? If you come
Yeah.
back multiple times.
Okay, so that's a good question. I'll answer it quickly so that we can see that it's not really relevant to this whole thing. It's kind of like, did I say this before? Propagating plants. I have a green thumb. That's one of my. I love plants, and I have a whole bunch of plants in pots in the backyard that we're saving for the property.
Nice. That's why you want to teach the laws of the land.
This is exactly.
Yeah.
This is. So what do you do every time that it's time to cut to trim the plants? It's so cool. You can just take a branch of the plant, stick it in the little starter. You can stick it in the ground, but you'll get more.
You graft them.
Yeah, you graft them, and you get a new one. Now, so is the new one? Is it the same one as the old one? It was interesting. I once asked, when I was just starting to learn about plants, and I asked the person at the plant store, like, I think I was buying trees, fruit trees, like, are all your trees grafted? They said, yeah, every tree's grafted. They said if you want to get if you taste a beautiful orange, a delicious orange, if you take a seed from that orange and plant it in the ground, it's a crapshoot whether you're gonna get a good orange. The reason is it's like parents. You can have two parents, and then they come together. They plant the seed, and then a child comes out. There's no guarantee the children forget about how they. The children, they have certain characteristics, but you can go take the seed of the same two parents, and every time a different child comes out with a different personality, with a different look, with a different. And the same thing is with a tree. If you take the seed of a seed of a fruit and plant it, take 10 seeds out of a fruit and plant it, they're all going to come out different. If you graft it, though, if you take a branch from that original tree and you plant it in the ground, then you are going to get the same thing, because you're taking from the original tree. But even then, are you getting the same tree? Is it the same tree as the original one?
Mm-hmm.
No, it's not. It's still a baby. Go look at the ones in the backyard. It still takes 5 years for it to be an adult, and it has its own identity. The one that's in the front yard is in the front yard. The one that's in the backyard is in the backyard. That's
what Larry does. That's what he does.
He's a plant guy?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Huge.
Really? Now you're making me want to come out more.
Our entire property, 2 acres, is just planted with cedars, Lebanons,
Really?
all kinds of fig, olive.
Wow. Okay, that's it. I'm coming to visit. Whether you like it or not.
You guys can have a conversation.
So then, souls and the resurrection of souls, not the Mashiach resurrection, but the way that souls are recycled, reincarnation, as you might call it. The reincarnation is not that like, oh, the same person is coming back because of this and of that. Then each time that a soul comes back into the world, when you say that it's like a propagation of that earlier soul. Each soul has its own identity. It has its own identity, and that's okay. And yes, each soul, the same way that I am my father's son, I have a certain connection. I am the reincarnation of someone else's soul, whoever that was. That doesn't mean that I have a confused identity. Am I me or am I him? Like, No. I'm me, he's him. I am a reincarnation of his soul. I'm me, my father's my father, I am his son, he is my father. Thank you. So the resurrection of the dead is not like that. The resurrection of the dead is each unique person. The parent, the child, each unique person coming back into the world. So the soul essentially is splintering.
As themselves?
What?
As themselves?
As the unique person that they
In
were.
other words, my father died.
Yeah.
Would he come back, his soul be reunited with his body, and he would come back
As your father, and then your father's soul was reincarnated from someone a couple hundred years ago, and their soul will be reincarnated as they were 200 years ago. Doesn't mean that everyone's going to come in. You're going to have the guys taking the wagons and.
Will you recognize whose soul you were planted from?
That's a good question. I would presume that has something to do with this new reality of Mashiach. That, a heightened spiritual awareness where we can see, we appreciate things that we can't appreciate right now. Did I tell you last week about the reward in heaven? I told you about the blind and the deaf.
I don't remember that one.
Okay, so this is another thing the Rambam says, and you forgive me because I know it's already 5:22, but Mashiach is one of the things I can just go on and on and on and on and on and on. So it says that Mashiach, that when the Rambam is describing heaven, the reward, he says like this, that just like someone who is born blind cannot appreciate the idea, the concept of color, and a deaf person, someone who is born deaf, cannot appreciate the concept of music, so too a soul in a body cannot fathom the concept of the pleasure or of experiencing God. Those words are huge. That, in essence, it gives us like a little, not exactly, but it gives us like a little bit of a frame of reference. The same way, like I understand what music is. I love music. I love looking at beautiful things. And to think that there's someone out there who is unable to even get into that space, to have any appreciation whatsoever. Not just that they didn't hear this piece of music. They cannot understand what sound is. And that same type of appreciation or lack thereof is what I'm missing out on right now, being in a body. It's impossible for me to really appreciate the experiencing God, and that is the experience of heaven. So comes along the resurrection of the dead and turns it upside down. It's built on Mashiach. There's the halachic definition of Mashiach, which is the fulfilling all the 613 mitzvahs. Then we have what you might call the prophetic definition of Mashiach, being the heightened awareness of God. And the ultimate experience of that is so much that really the souls in heaven, they're not really experiencing the essence of God. They can experience the light of God, but they cannot experience the essence of God. Experiencing the essence of God is something that can only happen in this physical world. Not right now as we know it, but kind of. It's only possible to experience the essence of God is something that the angels and the souls in heaven, they're the ones who are blind. They're the ones who are deaf. We're blind and deaf also, but the world that we live in right now is a world that is possible to experience the essence of God.
When it's renewed.
What?
When it's renewed.
Well, it's Goyla and Geula. It's only adding. It's adding the aleph, the Rebbe said, of Goyla and Geula, adding the letter to the exile, Aleph stands for Alufa Shalolam, Hashem, the knowledge of God, and that's what the Rambam finishes off his book. Umola ha'aretz deyas Hashem kamayim liyom mechasim. That when Mashiach comes, it's a verse from I forget that, and at that time, the knowledge of God will fill the world just like the water fills the ocean. That is the experience of Mashiach. So that's something. So we started off. Okay, there's reward and punishment. Reward and punishment, and oh wow, heaven sounds great. This sounds like a great experience. And then now comes to principle 13. Nah, not really. Heaven, it's cheap. I mean, cheap, relatively cheap. Compared to what you got now, it's not shabby. But it's not the essence of God. The essence of God is Mashiach, and the essence of God is Tchias HaMesim, the resurrection of the dead. So much so that the real reward for doing a mitzvah, in other words, the experience of that which we create through doing mitzvahs in this world, is something that can only be experienced fully in this world. And that's something, this is something that's not necessarily within the realm of a human right now to be at the point of, okay, come on, can we have this right now? This is beyond our reality right now. And you can't, and it's funny because some people say Mashiach is also beyond our reality, but that's the whole point, that Mashiach is not beyond our reality. Mashiach is something, I already have 300 mitzvahs. It's possible for me to say, I want the job done. I want to be able to do all of it. Pesach is coming in 2 weeks. I want to be able to sacrifice a korban Pesach this in 2.5 weeks. We'll go out to the market. We'll find a beautiful lamb. We'll get a few of our friends together because we can't finish a lamb by ourselves. My family, even 9 of us, we can't, a lamb. So that's it. That's why you have chaburas, and you get your families together, and everyone's going to have the lamb, and you offer the sacrifice. That's what I want to have in 2 weeks. That's something that is within reach for me to want now. Like let's, how about like right now? And then because it takes time already to get ready for Passover. Right now.
The way it used to be.
The way it used to be, and then the Rambam even the way it was 2,000 years ago, and even more than it was then. Even more than it was then, as the Rambam says in the end of these halachas, that there are actually there's one of the 613 mitzvahs. They were able to fulfill all 612 of the mitzvahs. The first time around of the Mashiach. It's interesting that the Rambam says that there are 2 Mashiachs.
Yes.
The first, you ever heard this in the Jewish context? The first Mashiach was?
Ben Joseph?
Nope.
Moshe?
Nope. King David.
That was the Ben David.
He built the temple.
King David was the one who was that warrior, who was the descendant from the tribe of Judah. I mean, he can't be a descendant from David because he was extremely knowledgeable in Torah. He was obsessed with mitzvahs. He fixed the breaches in Judaism. He fought the wars of God. He built the temple, and it actually was built by his son Solomon. But even that, it's a whole. Every time that in Kings, the Book of Kings, Solomon built it. Al Shem David Aviv. That like Solomon didn't view himself as him doing it. He was just an emissary. He was just an agent for his father David. Al Shem David Aviv. The verse is over and over again. Al Shem David Aviv. It was King David who built the temple. King David died already. It doesn't matter. King David built the temple. King David was the first Mashiach. And then the second Mashiach, with the one that we're waiting for now, is the second Mashiach is a Mashiach that will, how do we say? The Mashiach that we are waiting for is I just like completely spaced out.
Restore.
So it's going to restore, but then we also have 3 mitzvahs that King David. So King David brought back 612 of the mitzvahs, but there was one of them that the King David was never brought to fruition, which is, it says V'myarcha b'shem l'kechas gvulcha, which is a verse in Deuteronomy. It says that when there will come a time and your borders will expand, and you'll add 3 more cities of refuge on the East Bank. That's why I keep saying, why are we still negotiating about the West Bank? We need to start negotiating back to the East Bank.
Yeah.
It's that is the ultimate completion of Torah mitzvah. So it's going to bring back the completion that we experienced 2,000 years ago, and it's going to bring even more completion than ever existed before.
So it's a full circle.
It's a full circle, and then at a later time, at some point, there are different in the Zohar, the Kabbalah. It has different opinions. It's 40 years, 100 years. Is it immediate? There are actually debates in the Talmud, contradictions in the Talmud about when exactly the resurrection of the dead is going to happen. And the Rebbe explained that the reason for all these discrepancies is because there are multiple ways that it can turn out.
Mm-hmm.
There are multiple, so that's just, and that's fine.
One quick question is, do you think heaven is like a holding place for souls until they get back to earth? Or is that just crazy of me to say that? Very simplistic, but...
Maybe simplistic. I don't know about crazy. Simplistic.
Yeah,
Hold
it's like, because they're not quite as happy as they could be if...
So what's the real takeaway? What's the bottom line of when we say the 13th principle? Why is it so paramount to Judaism that if someone doesn't come on their own conclusion, someone does not figure out that this world is the ultimate, their whole Judaism is meaningless? What's wrong?
So this world is the ultimate, you said.
Yeah, that's right. Because that's essentially when you say that the resurrection of the dead. That is another way of saying that this world is the end. This is the end game. Heaven, if heaven is cheap compared to what's down here, that means that it's that means that this is the end game. This is the end. This is the ultimate. This world is the ultimate.
It's funny. I'll tell you that.
And so so why is that so important to Judaism? So hopefully now, did you see where it's going now?
I have some ideas, yeah. This world is important. Mitzvahs are important. Being in a body is important. It's not just like a waste of time to be down here.
And you could even say that this is the ultimate purpose of creation, not just as I guess maybe the word that Shoshana used is heaven a holding place, because at first you'd think that the world is a holding place for the souls to get back up to heaven. We're here just just for a couple, and then we go back to eternity.
Right, that's what a lot of people are taught.
And then now we're flipping it completely upside down,
Right.
and we're saying, heaven is the holding place. Heaven is the place. That's not the real deal. Is right here.
The one major religion of the world, besides Muslim, or what is it called? Not Muslim, but I mean whatever. But I mean, they believe that the world will be destroyed by fire. So their end game is fire and then heaven.
Fire and then heaven.
Yeah. So if heaven is not the ultimate and earth is the ultimate, then they naturally will have a redirection of their belief system when that time comes. That's all I can say. I don't know how else to.
So So what is? It's not even just that this world is valuable. Like this world is the fact that this world is valuable, we should have already figured out from
Islam, sorry.
from the principle number 1.
He created it.
He created it, and he's the creator and the guide of all created beings. It's not a waste of time for God to be involved in orchestrating this world. That already shows us that the world is valuable. Then when you get to principle number 5, that God is talking to people, now we're already starting to come down even more. Wow, this world is so important that God will talk to people in this world. And that Torah is an extension of God talking to people in this world. It happened to be to Moses, and the first 2 commandments were to all the Jewish people. And then we get rewarded and punished for that which we do in this world. There's no reward and punishment for what happens in heaven. What happens in heaven stays in heaven. Then when it comes to this world, and I know it's time we need to wrap up, the Torah is never going to be changed. The Torah is from Hashem. Hashem knows what we're doing in this world. Hashem observes. Hashem will reward us for what we do in this world. And then there's Mashiach, which is that another way of saying that Hashem's Torah, that which Hashem laid out in the 5 books of Moses, will, I don't want to say come true, but like it will be fulfilled. And then the ultimate is that this world is so important that everything else is cheap compared to it. All the heavens and all the angels and all the experiences, all the spiritual experiences that anyone could have, it pales in comparison to this world. Because obviously, like, it wouldn't be a principle of faith that we're gonna get a downgrade. Oh man, well, I wish I could have had heaven. This is better, and this is essentially the way that it ties back into Mashiach, and it ties back into what we said about reward and punishment, is that the reward is that you're experiencing that which you did. The reward is you did something, and then the reward is that you're now experiencing it. And so Mashiach, the reward for everything that we did, is that we will experience that, yes, when I do a mitzvah, something's actually happening when I do a mitzvah. I can't see it now. That gave COVID is actually a great analogy for it. I wrote an email a couple of years ago about, is COVID real? Yes, COVID's real. And just like the way it was, in the beginning, and that someone has COVID, but really they're a silent carrier, and they don't know that they have COVID. And so they say, when you do a mitzvah, you've infected that thing. It may take a couple of weeks before symptoms start showing up. And so we do mitzvah. When we do a mitzvah, we have transformed that thing. You may not see that which the mitzvah did right away, because there's the incubation period. But it will come out. If you got it, it will come out, and you can infect someone else. And so the same thing is with the mitzvahs that we do. The mitzvahs are accomplishing something. Right now, when we do a mitzvah, we are learning Torah right now, that is accomplishing something. And when will the virus, when will it go from dormant state into the revealed state, that you can actually see what it did? Because everything that we do, like here, we did something here. You can see it's a mess. For everyone here who's watching online, we've got a terrible mess. And hopefully in the next couple days, the mess is going to go completely away. And that is when Mashiach comes, that we'll see the reward for all that we did, and we'll see the actual outcome of every single individual thing that we've done. And hopefully this will give us not only more excitement about the coming of Mashiach, but it will give us more appreciation for the mitzvahs that we're able to do right now. Chaptarain, we can go jump on the opportunity to go do another mitzvah right now, because once the veil comes off, it's too late, not in a bad way, but there's just, it says when Mashiach comes, in Yiddish, we're going to go long for Golus again. We'll want to be in exile because we'll feel so embarrassed and so down about all the missed opportunities that we had in now. And that's it. We're overtime. Have a wonderful week. Have a wonderful Pesach. We'll hopefully, once I come back from Milwaukee, then we'll figure out what to do next. Hopefully 2 weeks from now, Pesach. Have a good evening.